discussion? And I will call for the vote with the corrections that Bob has stated. All those in favor? All right, and that passes. And now I'd like to open up the meeting to public comment. I would just remind you to be polite and considerate. Please don't use any names for privacy reasons. And when you come up to the microphone, or are we still online? Or if you're online, please state your name and your town. Okay, so is there anyone here who would like to come up and make a public comment?
Holly Stevens, Litchfield. So I just have a question about, my child has come home and told me that a student last year that had a problem with a gun being brought to school perhaps is going to come back to school the beginning of next year. So I just want to see if that's factual or that is rumor.
You want to call me tomorrow and we'll check in.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Any other comments? Anything online? Seeing how there's none, we'll move on. Any petitions or in communications? We'll move down on to reports. We'll do the superintendent's report.
Okay. So, can you hear me? NJ, is that on? The mic on? Oh, Jordan, can you hear me? Does it-
It was on.
Now is it on? There we go. Yes. Very exciting. Okay. So I had a request to also read the superintendent's report. I did put it in the packet, but no, this is the highlights from the last couple of weeks. So beginning with a huge shout out to Kathy Perry and John Varney for all their hard work, to have bus runs posted and updated for families. It was a very smooth start to the school year. Of course, in the last week with all the buses canceled this way, you know, I want to really personally say thank you to all the parents and families for having to rearrange and to pick up kids, drop off students. So we really appreciate it. I want to add an additional shout out, not in my report, that we've had two substitutes. One is Mark, who's also our football coach, has been doing morning runs. And then we have a new sub, Philip, who jumped right in. And John Varney has been riding the bus with the sub, the new sub, to make sure, you know, things are going as smooth. And Jessica, our business manager, will be riding the bus tomorrow to help support a substitute. So we're trying to do our best with that, but I just want to thank everyone for their hard work. And at the schools, the secretaries, administrators, teachers, everybody working really hard to get things organized and kids home safely, which is our number one goal. Also noted during the 2 workshop days, our administrators and their leadership teams facilitated meetings with all staff. Trainings included looking at new school year goals, Power School training, our PEPG evaluation system, procedural preparation for the start of the school year. There were grade level meetings and departments that also reviewed goals and expectations and looking at how to start the school year on a positive note. And there was also time for staff to engage in annual trainings and also work in their classrooms to prepare. Kathy Martin and I went with central office team to workshop day and did a welcoming for each building, really trying to focus on our theme this year, which is the nest. And there's the nest. And really reiterating how important it is to work on relationships, responsibility, and regulation. And so we went around because central office is an important part to that nest. Sometimes we're doing a lot behind the scenes to help do everything we can to support our schools. So we went around and talked about the importance of the nest and their role in that, nurturing our students so that they can be the best they can be. Talked about open houses. It was a lot of fun being at open houses and meeting parents and families and students and just seeing all the buzz and excitement for the new school year. Phase 3 of the Siemens contract has begun. Oak Hill Middle School burner conversion has started. Libby Tozier boiler replacement has also started. So again, staffs at those schools, especially Libby Tozier, making schedules around work areas has been really important. Also a big shout out to Brandy Muncie, thank you, Muncie. She did a really amazing job organizing, coordinating farm day at the Litchfield Fair. And it was fun to see the kids having a great time and staff laughing and learning. A lot of learning goes on at the farm, learning about pumpkin seeds and silos and how everything works. And they also get to play games, eat ice cream, have face painting. Our high school students were there helping and supporting through the JMG and some of our athletes. And so it was great to have the older students supporting the younger students as well. Our new football scoreboard has been installed. It has issues a little bit. We were sorry to say that the home score was not showing on Saturday's game. I talked to the company, and we are working with them to fix that, and also speaking to them about replacing the entire scoreboard. There was an incident during installation, so we need to talk to them about that. But it does look beautiful. So I wanted to note that. So that is the superintendent's report. I've also been asked to discuss the conversation that has been occurring around the budget referendum question and just to clarify some information about that. So everything that was in the budget booklet and discussed in the budget development is the correct numbers. The numbers that went to the towns for their taxes and to get tax bills ready and everything were the correct numbers. What was incorrect was on the warrant that was posted, which did not have the full local amount that had been approved to meet the total budget. So the budget number is the budget number. The taxes that were going to be collected, nothing's changing. It was an error in the number on the warrant. So the number should have been $3,649,525 would be the additional local needed to meet the $21,291,591 budget that was approved. So it was an error in the number that went in the warrant, but everything else is accurate. So what your taxes were going to be when you voted in June are going to be the taxes. That's how it was. It was an error in the number. So we've had to go back, working with the school attorney on how to fix this. Is we need to vote on Article 13, which is the additional local, for the correct number. So that's what's happening. And the letter is on the website explaining more information, and we will make sure that there's also communication that goes out before the vote. But there'll be more discussion on the 28th, and then on October 12th, there'll be a budget hearing again for Article 13, and then it will go to the referendum vote on November 8th. If people have specific questions, they certainly can email me, and I'll do my best to answer.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Sure.
Not related to that.
Okay.
Do you know where we're at with the pine tree security as far as them doing evaluations on the schools?
Yeah. John Varney will do his update at the next meeting, so he'll cover that.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you know if they've been in the building as well?
He's working with them. We did. They're different stages. So I believe they have not been in the buildings yet.
Okay.
They have this summer. They did. This summer. Okay.
This summer they've been through the buildings and they've given us a report back. Still talking with them about what we're looking to do going forward. And part of that also is going to be working with Megan Brown, our SRO, and involving her tremendously because she needs to be obviously heavily involved in what we do for future stuff. So I can certainly report on that quite a bit next week.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. And I do plan to attend the there is a big safety meeting in Augusta in October around safety planning.
Move on to the assistant superintendent report.
Yes, thank you. So as you saw at the last board meeting, we had a lot of new staff that joined our RSU4 family. This past August, we were excited to return to a new teacher orientation that was in person, where staff got their technology, understood some of the programming that we had, got to know our district, like our mission and vision, and also some strategies of how we build our nest, as Katie kind of talked about, with our students. For us, with this many new staff, it's important that we continue the professional development for each staff. And one of that first steps is to give each staff member a mentor. With the help of the administration in the last couple weeks, each staff member is paired with either someone in their department, their grade level, or content area. Our district has a local credential committee, and we have a chairperson of that, Jack Carney, at the high school. And him and I are going to be kicking off an orientation to support mentors and mentees. That's one of the areas that's kind of stopped during the COVID piece, and so we want to encourage those relationships and really help our new staff, feel welcomed and also be supported throughout the year. We also have some areas when we did our reorganization that some schools have less mentors than others, or certain departments have less. So we are partnering up with WMEC, which is Western Maine Education Collaborative. So we have a training in October that we will be providing to some staff that are looking to be at mentors. So also opportunities for their own professional development. Power School. So as you know, we have moved and switched over to Power School. Over the summer, our tech coaches, secretaries, nurses, and admin got trained. Huge shout out to NJ and Jordan, who have taken a lion's share of that task. So during our first workshop day, our staff were trained in the student information system. So for some, it just means taking attendance and able to get your demographics of your students. During our first few weeks, we've been starting to work on the grading system. So we call that our learner management system. We've been ensuring that all our standards are updated, and we're trying to make sure that the most updated for the Maine learning results. So a lot of the Maine learning results were actually updated in 2020 during the COVID years, and it's taken us some time to process, go over that, crosswalk from the old ones, and now we're starting with a clean, fresh slate into Power School. In addition, we have a third version that's called Performance Matters, which ends up being our data warehouse. We kind of talked a little bit about that last year. We will use those PLG times for our staff to be able to look at the data and to be able to make informed instructional decisions, as opposed to data mining, which we used to do on our data cards. So that will save them a lot of time to really make beneficial curriculum and intervention decisions. I wanted to give an update on our backpack program. So last year we had mentioned that one of our community members was interested in starting a backpack program. So I met with the pastor of the church that is sponsoring, as well as Hannah Diedrich, who is doing a nice job behind the scenes to kind of get a nonprofit and get the donations and get those pieces. Worked with, we're starting in the Litchfield schools, and so we met with Dustin and Michaela to talk about identifying students and that process. We look to service about 20 to 25 student families at the very beginning, and we'll be kicking that off in October. The last one is my food service hat. So we've heard today from the DOE that they will not be allowing waivers for students to have remote days. So in the past, we've been allowed to send our frozen meals home so students can access those meals in order to have remote days. However, the language that was given today states that students must be offered an in-person meal from the times 10 to 2 and eat on site in a conjugated area in order for us to get reimbursed. I actually ironically got added to a food service committee today, and I will work on some clarification. But if this stays true, that means our snow days will be traditional snow days this coming year. I will keep you informed if any changes should happen. That is the end of my report.
Can I ask a quick question? Sorry. Power School, you mentioned uploading demographics. Do you know what demographics they were looking for, and if so, what they're being used for?
So in your first day packet, you got a wonderful sheet that said, can you please verify the information, and everything that was on that first page that you saw as a parent, you verified if that was true. So it's address, your parents, who do you want in your household, who do you want as emergency contacts. Those are the kind of things that that we are updating and uploading. So it's not any new information that we didn't have in Infant Campus. It's anything that we have to report to the state.
Yes, so two things. Does, with the new change, are breakfasts still being subsidized by the state?
So this
So you
year,
said 10 to 2?
yeah, so this year breakfast and lunch is free for everyone, but I do want to say that we still need those FRAM letters. So we are charting, started to go through the process of, we're doing our round 2, and so letters will be going home for anyone that didn't complete the form. And so it is breakfast free and lunch is free this year, but we still need to collect the FRAM letters.
All right, so just follow up. So the FRAM letter is the free and reduced lunch
Yes.
program?
Yes.
And even if you don't qualify, if you're out there listening, please fill it out, because there are a lot of other things associated with those applications besides free and reduced lunch. So it can give us Title I grants and other things that help provide a better education for our students. So please fill them out, even if you would not qualify for the free and reduced lunch. My other thing, so you said snow days would be snow days, old snow days. Is that because in order to count as a day, you have to feed a meal?
Correct, and we wouldn't be able to be reimbursed.
All right, but we could provide it if we didn't get reimbursed, but,
It can't count as a school day unless we provide meals.
right, okay.
So can we not,
And in this language, it's in person.
can we not send home a frozen meal like last year?
That's gotta be-
We cannot get reimbursed for those frozen meals.
We could.
We could send them home.
We couldn't count
We
it
would
as
not,
school.
we would be not being reimbursed for those meals. We would be eating the money.
I mean, what would be the cost? I mean, you're talking about saving potential money by not busing kids around that day.
Further discussion, I think, on another.
Yeah, we just learned this morning, so more information gathering.
Kathy, just follow up on FRAM. It's one application per student.
It's one application per household.
Have multiple students who are involved.
Yep, so if we see the application in the household, we are charting that to make sure that we're all set. But we are going through and making sure. We actually have linked to the app, so you will be seeing on Facebook and our website that you will be able to apply through the app starting next week, and that will help some families complete it as well.
And Power School, do we believe that's why people are getting 6 or 7 calls in central office?
NJ really wanted to make sure everyone knew the information. More information is better than not getting any information. We do have a parent portal that parents will have access to get into Power School and be able to check their accounts and their own demographics. We'll be rolling that out in the next couple of weeks as well.
Awesome, thank you.
Just a quick verification with Power School, when you talked about data for students, is the NWEA information and all the previous data that we've had, that's being uploaded and accessible, and so it's a more streamlined process for everybody? Is that
Yes, so we have our longitudinal data in there as well. And CAI will have an opportunity after our next round of NWA to kind of look and see what the teachers see in the Power School side. So stay tuned for our CAI friends.
Cool, thanks.
Any other questions or discussion? Thank you, Kathy. Our financial report will happen at our next board meeting. Administrators report. And on here it says Mr. Miles is going first.
I got the short end of the straws. All right. Good evening. My name is Dustin Miles. I'm the principal at Libby Tozier School and Carrie Ricker. Tonight, I would like to first tell you about some of the successes we've had at both schools and then share some happenings at each school individually. A focus for myself and assistant principal, Michaela Stevens, is to utilize our two schools at Carrie Ricker and Libby Tozier so that we are able to grow and learn from our incredible staff resources that we have available. For our opening 2-day workshop, we combined staff to meet at Libby Tozier and did introductory activities. They introduced the staff to one another, allowed us for future conversations centered around students. We were able to participate. Oh, I forgot about that. There we go. We'll get there. That allowed us to, I'm sorry, we were able to participate in PD together during the 2 days, ask questions with one another, while always focusing on the students. We continue this method of collaboration into our PLGs as well. This afternoon, we had all staff at both schools participate in our coaching launch at Carrie Ricker and learning how instructional coaches can support and collaborate with all staff. This included ed techs for our first hour as we continue to build our community amongst the two schools. I cannot overstate how great it is to have ed techs and teachers learning side by side during these PLGs. It allows us to build common language and vision amongst our school that will help strengthen and continue the dedication of supporting all of our students. As our nest becomes stronger at both Carrie Ricker and Libby Tozier, a huge part of this is due to the fact that we have this time to grow together. Another example of collaboration we've had between Carrie Ricker and Libby Tozier is that of increasing instructional classroom time by 20 minutes per day simply by adjusting how we look at the calendar. With the tremendous support of our unbelievable kitchen and custodial staff, we now have grab-and-go breakfast in the morning so students can eat in the classroom while doing their morning activities instead of being in the cafeteria for the first 30 minutes. This expedites the process of breakfast so students are fed, ready to learn, and in the classroom all within a quicker time span. So, pictures. For the first couple of weeks, Libby Tozier has been filled with students and parents both adjusting to seeing what school is like for the first time in either kindergarten or pre-K. We started off with an exciting week as kindergarten attended farm day. So, first time with this clip. Oh, you? Okay. Can you?
This is why they had you go first.
Right? Get all the kids out. Oh, this is it? Okay. I forgot we have one slide for Farm Day. All right. So Farm Day. This was only possible with the incredible leadership and collaboration between Farm Day coordinator and math coach Brandy Munksy and with all the staff at Libby Tozier. Students were treated with a jump house, animals, snacks, and we even snuck in a little bit of learning along the way. In the classroom, we are building friendships, learning routines, developing our number sense and vocabulary, and the kids are doing an amazing job as we are already seeing growth in many ways. At Carrie Ricker, there we go. We have started off with lots of success in and out of the classroom. Our third grade students are working on building community, fluency in reading, and comprehension. Our goal is for students to build up their reading stamina that will transfer into multiple areas of academics. Our fourth grade students are doing an amazing job with their personal narratives and writing class that we've heard some of already, some very interesting stories, and sharing a lot about learning and how they go through the process. Finally, we continue to build our social emotional strategies to use with our students inside and outside the classroom on regular social emotional and mindfulness activities in school. If there's any questions or comments, I'd be happy to entertain them.
I'd like to just say that I appreciate as a parent seeing the last 2 weeks of school, seeing either yourself or Ms. Stevens outside at morning drop-off. I think that's been very nice for some of the kiddos, especially some that have never been to that school before, to see somebody who's familiar instead of just walking up to the front door and then there being a teacher. They're actually being an adult outside. It's been really, really nice and helpful. So thank you.
Yep. Yes.
And kudos to you at Carrie Ricker for an easy pickup at the end of the day. It was like I pulled in, went smooth, went right in, and came out. So it was awesome.
No, it's all the staff. They do an amazing job there.
Thank you. Next will be SPS and Oak Hill Middle School. There's 3 of you on here, so.
Hi, everyone. Well, come stand next to me. Come stand next to me. I know. I'm Amy St. Pierre. I'm the principal of Sabattis Primary School and Oak Hill Middle School. And with me to my right.
I'm Annie Arnold, the assistant principal at the primary school.
And Jen Hudner, the assistant principal at the middle school.
So at both Sabattis Primary School and Oak Hill Middle School, we had a really positive start to the school year. On the first 2 staff days, staff focused on building the nest, which you've all heard about already tonight. Together, we focused on building relationships with one another and preparing to best support students for the school year. At Sabattis Primary School, we had Power School trainers to support staff as we work to learn a new platform that we're rolling out this year. Denise Meehan was the trainer at Sabattis Primary School, and at Oak Hill Middle School, we had Chad Guimond, Karen Matthew, Lori Bushi, and Lee Matthew as our Power School trainers. Staff spent the morning at Oak Hill Middle School and Sabattis Primary School, rotating through breakout sessions where they focused on standard operating procedures for the buildings. They worked on advisory groupings and how that would look and planning that out for the school year, safety procedures and protocols, and technology. Open house at both schools was a huge success. At Sabattis Primary School, students and their families toured the building while completing a scavenger hunt together. At Oak Hill Middle School, students picked up their schedules and they were able to meet their teachers. And Oak Hill Middle School staff and students are working really hard already at building their advisory groupings and playing games together, doing team building activities. It's a really great start to their mornings. The first field trip of the year for Sabattis Primary School staff and students was on Friday, and a huge thank you to Brandy Munsey for planning and organizing this event, as well as the 46 parent chaperones that supported our staff and students, and the local area businesses who donated their time or products for the event. And up at we have all of the sponsors and the local businesses that donated their time. And
working again. It's not like moving to the next one, but anyway. So Farm Day was an incredible event for everyone, including myself. I'd never been. It was amazing. We had a lot of we had all those chaperones, 46 chaperones to support students, so that teachers were able to fully experience the Farm Day, interact with their students, with all of their students, and take lots of pictures. The experience didn't end on Friday for the students or for the teachers. They were able to have shared experience to write about, which was matched their narrative writing curriculum. And I was able to see a lot of that writing as I went through the school, and I sat with students as they read them to me, and they were very excited to have that experience. I don't need you to go any faster. Okay.
I went the wrong way. I went the wrong way, so I have to go back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't watch the screen, just
shared experience. Okay. Where's the rest of it? Oh, okay. Another really positive thing. So that's Farm Day. Okay, now this is the other positive thing. Building the nest at Sabattis Primary. Teachers, these pictures are classroom community meetings. These are happening in all of the classrooms every single day. In the morning, getting students familiar with each other and the process of becoming good friends and a good community, and the teacher is able to learn so much about the students and what their likes and dislikes are to connect them with curriculum and all that good stuff. And the students are always seeming really happy and really engaged, and it's really fun. Sometimes I participate as well, so that's also fun. So. So that's helping the students build relationships and develop empathy. And if you go to the next slide, we're doing this whole scale in our first whole school community meeting. This particular community meeting was about the SOP for we were doing the SOP for how to behave in one of these massive school-wide meetings, like an assembly, and also building our vision. So it was very interactive. The students were grouped up, and we talked about the different ways that it looks to be safe, respectful, and responsible. And so that all this work really is leading to such a successful start to the year. Good positive start to the year. Okay. Thank you. You don't want me to do that? Okay.
Right pin. At the middle school, with the help of the building leadership team, they've worked on safety protocols, practiced as a whole school, and made improvements after each drill. You got it. Okay. I wanted to give a shout out to the tech crew for handing out 400 plus iPads to the students in just a few hours, and then still troubleshooting the endless login questions. The staff have organized a care club to reinforce the positive start to the school year and keep to the momentum going. We've also, if you keep going, instituted a grab and grow breakfast in the mornings. Yeah, next one. And the students are then taking their breakfast and going and eating in advisory. They're doing a lot of great advisory activities in the morning. Sometimes they're joining with other advisory groups to get to know not just their own small group at the classroom next to them, and slowly building their community, having a really good time at recess, always the favorite, and learning.
All sorts of spaces.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous.
Thank you.
Questions?
Amy, were you gonna touch on the mixed advisories? Or, because we had an email exchange.
Yeah, do you have questions?
Well, I guess maybe people would want to know sort of like the idea behind the whole thing.
So the mixed advisory groups are grades 6 through 8. We've kept 5th grade with 5th grade because they're still learning middle school. They're learning to transition to a new school. They're learning the ways of middle school. So that's really important to keep them together for right now. But 6th through 8th grade, they are mixed, and it's past practice. That's what they used to do at the middle school. And it's been going really well. Excuse me. It's been going really well, building relationships, building that family feel, that community feel amongst the whole school is really important. And Jenny and I have been bouncing around and participating in the activities, and so far so good. Yeah.
The idea is that once you get to know people, not just in your age group, you feel more of a community. And so there's less of that middle school stuff going on if they're starting to see 6th, 7th, and 8th graders as part of their family and not as strangers.
I think it's a great idea. I'm curious to see how it goes. The successes you have from it.
Yeah. So far so good. So we're really excited about it. Other questions?
Having both of my children in both of your schools, I want to shout out pick up and drop off. It's like
Yes.
Thank you.
So Mr. Barney.
Yes, you did an amazing job.
I mean, I know that, I think at the middle school, particularly for pickup in the afternoon, having the buses go out and then being able to utilize the circle has made it really easy. And as people are more used to going all the way down, I think it will be even better. Farm Day from a chaperone's perspective was awesome. I felt like I had all the information I needed. I had 3 kids, one of them was my own to kind of be in charge of, and it was great for them to be able to have that opportunity, especially our 2nd graders who have never been on a field trip before.
Yeah.
So, it was a really
So
big deal for
exciting.
them. So thank you for everything that you guys do.
Like Jill said, with Carrie Ricker, I've noticed staff outside of Oakdale Middle as well.
Yeah.
Which I really like to see, because I feel like you have that first of the day interaction with the student, maybe kick it off right. And if you don't see a smile, maybe there's an opportunity to maybe find out why and address it before the student's going through the whole entire day in a bad mood or a slump.
Yeah.
So I like seeing the staff outside meeting kids.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're gonna get Marco for the high school? Ooh, and Sam. It's double duty.
Yeah, why don't you just click? Is that okay? All right, I'll tell you when. Just cue me. Cue you. All right. You wanna hold that phone? I just wanted to put it down. All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Sam and I are excited to share some happenings at Oak Hill High School. And just so that you guys know, I'm Marco Aliberti, principal at Oak Hill High School. And with me is Samantha Garnett-Sias, the assistant principal at Oak Hill High School. You can go ahead and jump to the next slide. Thank you so much. So we start with thanking John Varney and Jay Hopkins and our custodial crew for getting our building into shape to start the school year. And additionally, we have some outside vendors do some work I'd like to highlight, and that's Dan Marquis of Marquis Signs, who installed a new sign at Oak Hill High School. Robbie, this was in the space where your beautiful oak tree was at one point in time. It was super bare, so we needed to put something up there to take up that negative space. Thanks, I appreciate that.
And then Jeff Wright, who is an alumni of Oak Hill High School and also a former teacher at Oak Hill. He donated his time and expertise in landscaping to revitalize our fishbowl space. You can see those beautiful potted plants and flowers and mulching that was done outside there. And also he took care of the Stacey Doucette Memorial. So we appreciate his hard work and effort there. Came out very nice. Thank you. We welcomed our staff back from summer vacation. They were super pumped at 7:30 in the morning to go outside and take a picture. They're like, oh my gosh, are we going to do this? Yes, get out there, smile. Okay. Right, so it's come back from summer vacation and set the tone for the school year with 2 very productive workshop days. The feeling in the building was one of returning to normal business. And I appreciate the attention to our new programs, platforms, and systems. They were drinking from the fire hose, that's for sure. There's just a lot, as far as changes and getting back in the swing of things. They did an amazing job, had great attitudes. As I said, I think that they're just really, really happy to be back at work and focused on kids is what it comes down to. Next slide, please. We welcome the class of 2026 on Freshman Orientation Day. Students were able to get familiar with the building, meet their teachers, and participate in a scavenger hunt. The picture you're looking at is at the end of the day. This is a question and answer session with upperclassmen, which I am not allowed to attend because I take up a lot of time by answering questions that the kids are supposed to be answering. And last year, Sam basically kicked me out. She's like, you got to leave. This is about them. And I was like, all right. So I left. But it's a great day for the kids to just get orientated with the building and to find out what's going on and what's ahead of them without really anybody else being there. So the staff is all there to support them and get from point A to point B. So they're not so nervous on that first full day of school when upperclassmen arrive. And this is an excellent session at the end of the day because our student leaders are fantastic and answer the questions that the kids ask appropriately. It's just a nice perspective to have. All right. And then on the first student day with everybody, we started our day with a brief assembly to talk about Dr. Siegel's hand model and to outline our district theme, which is Build the Nest. And I'm going to turn it over to Sam. She's going to take you through the next few slides.
Thank you, Marco. It's interesting that Marco said it felt like coming back to normal and like getting back to normal. So we did a presentation about the hand model of the brain, which interestingly tied very nicely into our professional work as an administrative team this year and the theme that you've been hearing about consistently, Build the Nest, the 3 R's, relationship, regulation, and responsibility. So in February of 2020, with our freshmen in the assembly, who are now our seniors, we presented this idea of the hand model of the brain for Dr. Dan Siegel, which is very simple, easy to remember, and just goes like this, right? And basically, in essence, is, communicating and educating our students about their cognitive development and about being regulated and how they do their best work with us as students when they are in a good emotional space and they haven't flipped their lid, is what Dr. Dan Siegel says, right? So their limbic brain or their downstairs brain isn't the one making decisions for them. So we brought our now seniors, who were freshmen at the time, back in time to that and just kind of recapped, really briefly with the rest of our student body to kind of frame our work and to explain to them the work that we're going to be undertaking as a staff to support them and to help them be regulated, to help them build relationships, and just to lay a foundation that we're here to build relationship with you so that you have a trusting environment and a safe place where you can come to learn. Next slide, please. So we talked about the 3 R's. We introduced that in our presentation. It was a brief assembly, but it was just meant to kind of give a teaser or a taste to our students that this is what we're committed to working on with you and what we'll be building into our work as a school community. Interesting, the work that Katie and Kathy did with the central office team when they came, they had our staff write a pledge or a commitment to our students and to building the nest together. So they had a small slip of paper and they put that paper into a nest. And it was very symbolic and I think really moving for our staff, but we had a really amazing staff member, Kirsten Arndt, who teaches art at the high school. school, who volunteered to take those slips of paper and those commitments, and she turned it into a literal nest. So if you're at the high school and you want to swing by, it's in one of the trophy cases in the front lobby. She created a beautiful tree with some different media, and the intent, I think, is to fill that nest, which was created by the staff pledges, with the eggs of students and student names in our school. So beautiful, symbolic, pledge for our work professionally together. Next slide, please. So touching on what we've heard a lot about, getting back to normal and getting our students out in the community. We had close to 30 students in the JMG program, which was spearheaded by Anthony Fernald, our JMG specialist, and we had Derek Anderson, who volunteered to chaperone our group as well. But those students, and you can kind of just go through these slides with a few seconds in between. We had our students that were face painting for the younger students that came to Farm Day. They were participating in the games and supervising the games. You'll see a couple of familiar faces in that photo there, providing refreshments and really just doing an excellent job representing as Raiders and supporting, our students in the younger grade levels. So big shout out to Anthony and his work in organizing with the JMG crew, but also just a couple little shout outs to, John has done a tremendous job as the transportation director, kind of handling all of the obstacles that have come his way. But he really went out of his way to find a creative solution when we didn't have a bus for that field trip. So we had to get 30 students to, the farm day. And so kudos to Brian as well. Brian Daniels and I, took some vans and we carted students back and forth until we had everybody there ready to participate. So thank you for your creative solution on that. And as Marco mentioned, we've had some community members, but also we've had a super generous outpouring from community partners. And so we just wanted to acknowledge we've had, the Meadows Golf Club has donated golf bags to every member on our golf team this year, which is amazing. We've had a lot of community partners that have donated to different things, like our Industrial Arts has just a list of community partners that have either given discounts or donations to the program. Stevens Greenhouses donated some flower pots to the fishbowl as well. And Sabatis Duncan, the manager of Sabatis Duncan, dropped by the high school 2 weeks ago, a little while ago, and just gave us 20 gift cards to raffle away to staff and, some Dunkin' swag. So just, really feeling a heartwarming feeling from our community members and small businesses. So we really appreciate that and just wanted to acknowledge that publicly. And next slide. So just to finish, just some exciting things that we're pursuing at the high school this year. There's a couple of partnerships that we just wanted to highlight. So Officer Megan Brown has really spearheaded an effort to partner with Healthy Androscoggin, recognizing that substance use and abuse at the high school has been a really, tricky wicket, if you will. And so we want to really balance, holding high expectations of our students for behavior and conduct, but also with the support and resources that they need. So we have met a couple of times in this fledgling partnership with Healthy Androscoggin representatives, and I'm pleased to report that tomorrow we have our first school-wide assembly where we have a trained substance abuse counselor who will be coming from Healthy Androscoggin to speak to all of our students about information about vaping, dangers of vaping, resources to quit, and we'll continue that partnership and have a follow-up assembly with a different focus, and also be looking to arrange some parent information sessions and have an informational booth staffed by a substance abuse counselor at our fall parent conferences. And I'll kick it back to Marco for these other partnerships, but thank you for your time to share some good things happening at Oak Hill High School.
And just a couple other partnerships that we have going and some exciting opportunities for our students. First up, we have JMG, which we have obviously a partnership with and a specialist in the building, but kind of the coordinator for our area, Kelly Barassa, who is a former employee of RSU4, reached out in regards to an exciting opportunity for workforce training for our students. So we're looking to target a specific set of students where they can participate in some curriculum. It's online curriculum. If they complete the curriculum, they move forward with a job placement or experience. They complete 40 hours and they get $500. Yeah, which is pretty amazing, right? So nice incentive there to get out there, get some experience in any of the opportunities that might be there for them. So we're excited about that. And similarly, with our special education population, we have vocational rehab boot camp, and that's through the Department of Labor, which is pretty exciting, and it's similar. So this time around, they'll have somebody come into the building and work with specific groups of kids. Again, workforce training opportunities and a job placement, so that students can get some experience again out in the real world and learning how to operate, in a job situation. So very exciting partnerships with all three of those, and we're looking forward to see what comes of it. So that, yes. Oh, sorry. Question? Nope.
Does Voc Rehab still provide what students require for specific jobs, like tools?
Yes, they will pay for those pieces. Yes, and Nancy, I'll just maybe ask: is there anything that you would add to that in regards to tools or equipment that they might need?
Just that I had mentioned previously, they would pay for coursework beyond school.
Good.
Coursework beyond school. Thank you, Nancy. So that concludes my report. Any questions, ladies and gentlemen? Diane.
How many kids do you have in your freshman class this year?
Oh, there are roughly 100 students. I don't know off the top of my head, Diane, but it's roughly 100. Yep.
Have we lost a lot from 8th grade to there?
I mean, not that I know of. No.
I'll shout out your high school students that were at Farm Day. They were like superstars, little kids. They were so kind and just so engaging. It was awesome to see.
Great. Thank you. We'll provide that feedback. Thank you. Yes, Robbie.
I did notice that Central Maine Community College is having night classes, like boiler technician classes, and I think those are all free now.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
And they're night classes.
But
Excellent.
they're night classes.
No, that's potentially a good thing.
But,
Yeah.
So, I mean, it would be an entryway to, to a pretty good job.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that information,
But,
Robbie.
yeah, just go on their website.
Yep.
They've got all the listings, and yeah.
Great, thank you. Appreciate that. It's good.
Yeah, it started tonight.
And goes through to December.
No way, really. That's great. No, thanks, Robbie. Appreciate that.
Any other questions? Thank you, Marco.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you. And the director's report will be given at our next board meeting. And we are still working on a student rep. And there is no new business, so we'll move on down to, no old business, sorry, we'll move on down to new business.
Jill, can I interrupt? We didn't do appointments and resignations.
Did I miss something?
We missed it.
The superintendent's report.
I didn't say them out loud.
Oh, okay.
Did we meet it or we good?
I think we're good.
I wasn't sure if they needed to be. Sorry.
So for new business, 7.1, to discuss the creation of an ad hoc committee charged with recommending a district capital improvement plan to the school board. So this was where we had our workshop and talking about which way we would want to go. How we want to model the committee and where we want to head with that. Sort of similar to what we did with our CPT committee or things like that. So what are your thoughts?
Have we made any progress on getting engineers to go into those schools so we know exactly what needs to be done?
No, we have not.
Okay, so I would just revoice my big concern is we get a lot of people involved in coming up with a plan before we know what needs to be done. So it's a great idea. We're going to need it. I don't believe that it would be that beneficial now. Once we know what the total package is of things that need to be completed, that the engineering and everybody can find out, then we need to get it going, and we need to get it going right away to start setting the priorities, because it's going to be a lot of budget dollars that's going to have to be expended on making the repairs, whatever they are. So those are my thoughts on this capital improvement plan.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I sort of agree with Bob. I think what we don't need is a whole bunch of people that really don't know what they're looking at, trying to come up with a plan. I think if we have a list of items that we can actually physically see and give our, the input from the architect. And then that would be like all the information that the committee would need, and then we could prioritize our list. We could talk about funding, we could talk about how we're gonna get to where we need to be. But until we see what needs to be done, I really think we're shooting in the dark.
Anyone else?
I do think there might be some value in guided listening sessions with different groups.
I know.
I can't talk tonight. So if we, much like what we did with the workshop with the board, because I think that our community members, our teachers, our parents want to have a say, and it could be very interesting in terms of data collection to think about having these meetings or whatever, however we want to do it, to kind of gather ideas. So we have that data, and then once we have the plan from the architect, we can kind of look at themes and use that to kind of guide us from my research brain, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea, but it wouldn't be a committee.
No.
It would be
Right,
some
so,
workshops to get
yeah.
input from the community members and staff
Yes.
about things that they believe need to be considered
Or
in the,
looked at, yes.
in the building,
Yes.
whether it's air quality, entrances, lighting,
Right. Yeah. So I think
driveway, whatever it might be.
in light of how involved the community was in the vote, I think that we should capitalize on the fact that people want to be involved and want to give ideas.
Right, because they might have come up with some things that
That we
the
can think
engineers
about. Right.
might not pick up on.
Right.
And then when we have that and you merge it, you got that other information, you can merge that stuff in there.
So I feel
A
like
good
that
idea.
might
Yeah.
be a good starting point, so it's not viewed as the school board saying, well, we didn't get our way, even though that's not what we've all said. But, like, I think by really involving the community, they'll have a better understanding of options. No idea is a bad idea at this point, so I think it's a way to really involve people. So that's what I would suggest, not so much an ad hoc committee yet, because we don't have the information, but capitalizing on the fact that people are paying attention, which has not always been the case in our community. I think it would be a really smart move.
I think to go with that, to be very clear about what the intention of that is, because I know when we were all doing our workshop piece of this, we were wanting to jump the process, and so we have to be mindful of that, to know that this is an information gathering piece and that it's one part of it, that we need to have the other part for the whole picture to be able to make educated decisions about what need to happen, and to keep people in the loop with that. So I think it's really important to make sure that we're not jumping the process, but to have full involvement as much as possible. And on an aside note, I found it really interesting in Facebook memories for myself that 7 years ago, as there was an article that a community member had taken a photo of and was saying thanks to my husband and I for all the work that we had done and getting an award and blah, blah, blah. But the bigger headline of it all was, concerns about Sabattis Primary School and what are we going to do next, and looking at the building condition and all the things. And it was, sadly comical to look at that and say, and 7 years ago, this is what we were talking about. And here we still are. So that's just an interesting
And
point.
I think it's a great idea, because for the simple fact is, the architect is gonna look at what's gonna make the building safe,
Right.
what's gonna keep the air clean, what's gonna, fire protect, all those things.
Right.
But there's another whole list of things that the community feels that's important.
Right.
Like, why we bus our kids around, why aren't we just Litchfield kids going to Litchfield, and
Right.
Sabattis kids going to Sabattis? So the more conversations we have about that, the bigger picture everybody has.
Right.
And I think you're right, it's definitely part of the process.
Yeah. Scott?
Well, I'm just kind of thinking, why don't we kind of establish what this committee is going to look like and sort of iron out the details. That way, when we do get reports back from engineers, we can dive right into it rather than waiting for the next board meeting to do the same thing that we have time to do now. On top of which, maybe this committee can sort of help get the ball moving as far as getting engineers or construction companies in to see what needs to be done.
Sean?
So when we formed the RSU, the RPC committee was formed with a board member from each community, a municipal official from each community, and a member of the public from each community. They gave us 9 people, and then we had an outside moderator that was supplied by the state to moderate, who did a great job, I think, in keeping us on track at the time. So I think that's just a good starting point. We might, in this particular case, because it's a little bit different, perhaps a member of the association, just, for their viewpoint. And you don't want it too big, because you get it too big, you never get anything, right? And you don't want it too small, because you want to get the inputs. So if we have a community member and an official from each community and a board member, that's 3 people that the people in the community can contact. You should know how to get a hold of all 3 of them to get their inputs in. And then if we have a few staff members to represent, maybe not one for every building, but maybe a professional, maybe in a sports staff representative to go in there that can gather information. That would be 11, 12-ish, which I don't know that you want to get it much bigger than that. We purposely kept this board at 9 because we would have had to jump to like 13 or 14 to make the numbers work because of the weighted vote. And we thought at that time it was too many people.
How many were on the CPT?
We ended up, I think it ended up being like up to 15 at one point.
I
Yeah.
think 12 voting plus I was on it from the board, so I couldn't vote, and Andy and Kathy. Yeah.
Is the CPT committee supposed to be a continuing to go and review safety procedures and stuff like that?
That was not the intent.
No, it dissolved at the end of last school year. But like-
I know it
Yeah.
was for the COVID,
Right.
but I'm talking about by DOE regulations or statute. There was something at one point when we read that a CPT were established, but I don't know if that whole thing expired or not. But they were tasked with looking at school safety plans and plans for emergencies, such as flooding, tornadoes, hurricanes, shooters, whatever. But I think that was the initial, it's just a side note to go and look up and confirm whether or not we have to have that committee still in effect, because that affects certain people. So, I'm sure you can reach out to DOE and they can tell you.
You were asking if you have to have a committee to continue, like the COVID? Because
Not COVID, but
a safety committee?
it's
Oh,
a
okay.
collaborative planning team or a crisis planning team.
You're not required, no, there's no requirement for that.
Okay, well, all right. I'll go back and do my research.
Yeah, if you find something,
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
strange. So we talked about it,
yeah.
superintendent and I, that, we should have had this thing in effect for a long time, and we didn't.
Okay. Yeah, if you find that, send it to me.
So do we, for this particular committee, what do we want to do about a moderator? Can we just select somebody from the administrator or?
I don't know,
Rather
I
than,
would, in the early stages, you're getting this stuff, maybe you can get by with an in-house moderator, but when you start getting down to the nitty-gritty of stuff, you may want to go and get, a moderator that's on the board of moderators or whatever they happen to belong to.
I'm just thinking about cost.
Well, I know there's some cost to it, but this is a multi-million-dollar project that we're going to undertake. We got to make sure that we do it as right as we can. So some costs to help make sure that the committee functions well and brings good recommendations, not only to the board, but to the communities. You know, there's a cost involved in doing it, just like getting engineers instead of us going through and
Yeah.
saying this needs to be fixed and that needs to be fixed. But it's not, you don't have to make that decision now, and probably not until next year's budget, which may
Right.
be built into that budget.
That's the point I was just gonna make, is that that engineering firm and study is gonna cost us money, and I don't believe we can take it out of this year's budget. Because I know when we did the one for Sabatis and Libby Tozier back in 2010.
The Wales one, yeah.
And the Wales
Mhm.
one, I think, off the top of my head, I'm saying that was like over 50.
So we'd have to talk about, this probably might have to go out to RFQ too,
Oh, yeah,
around.
most definitely.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, we're gonna have to have an RFQ, get engineers in, and, interview them, and,
yeah.
yeah.
So I guess I'm kind of just hearing we want to table, is that what we're saying, is just to table this until we get more information from an engineer?
What I'm hearing is a couple things, and we can talk more about it as, maybe you and I can talk more. Like, do we want to do some, because it's top of mind, some focus groups, right, and get some data? And then, is there any funding available to do anything around engineers, things like that? Is that going to have to wait? And some of this can be done through the Facilities Finance Committee too, as we can have a discussion on it.
Who's tasked right now to find engineers?
Right.
Who?
Well, we were talking about checking in with what an engineer might charge for that. Like, I'm working with CHA to talk about the revolving loan, and she's supposed to get back to me this week. I have not heard from her, or I would have had more to report. Kathy Kogan, the one that worked with you for the expansion project. So the revolving loan may give us some information when they look at how we're going to do an application for that, if we're going to do an application for that. Because there's a process for a revolving loan. And then we haven't done any more than that we're going to check in what got done with the Libby Tozier. With everything going on with transportation stuff, we really haven't had time to really focus on what was done in that initial report in 2010. And then we're going to look at even getting an estimate of what something like that would cost. Not to hire anyone or anything like that. It was more fact-finding.
Yeah, no, I'm just, a few
Right.
months ago, the buildings were falling apart, and it's
Right.
like, it seemed like it was something that needed to be addressed right away. I'm just
Right.
wondering, do we have somebody, is somebody appointed to start putting this process through? I mean,
Right. Well, tonight was the first thing is how do you want to do it? Do you want it through a committee, ad hoc committee running some of this? Do you want me to run some of, I think that's why we were talking about how do you want
we need
to,
get somebody to get the ball rolling.
right, right.
I agree.
Mhm.
And if construction passed, we'd already planned that the current buildings would suffice for at least the next 2 years during construction. So we got a little leeway, but we don't have, and of course, anything can go wrong. Something in Oak Hill Middle School could blow up, and, we lost some kitchen equipment. Yeah.
I guess I'm just concerned with why wait, because we
Well-
think that there's potentially some structural issues
Mhm.
with cracked floors and stuff.
Well, we didn't wait on that. John has had, he tried to get several companies to go over and look at Sabatis Primary. Right? We've not had luck on that. So things have been looked at.
Yeah, sure. So if we
Definitely.
set up a committee, can some of these
Right.
people try and maybe get some people in here to look at
Right.
these things?
Because the problem is money. We can have people look and give a quote, but you have to have funding in order to support that. So if an architect costs $30,000, we talk about,
We're talking about engineers, not.
engineer to do, we're looking right now at an engineer to look at fields and stuff, and that's $15,000. Just to look at a field.
There must be some commercial building people that would,
Do it for free?
yeah, give an estimate, why not?
Well, they did, everything you,
To fix a floor, wouldn't they come in
Yeah.
and just take a peek at it?
Well, the
I
list-
could make some phone calls, so.
but the list that we put together for the expansion, that is what they did. So that list of fixing the roof, we had a roof person look at and give an estimate. So everything on that list, you're right, Scott, a committee could look at that list that was put together by Siemens and by contractors that have looked at our properties. We've had people look and give estimates. That was part of that document. That whole list was part of people looking and giving us a quote.
On certain things, it's not on, right?
It was things that have come forward that were
Sure, but
concerns.
So take the
Roof,
SPS floor, for instance.
right.
We
We couldn't,
Nobody knows about it.
no, I just told you, we tried to get, we have called somebody to
Right,
come give a
but
quote.
It's on the list, and yet we don't have somebody that is on that list that actually looked at it, so I'm confused. I think,
Do you mean on the list was the floor?
yeah.
Right, but I just told you, we tried to get a quote for that, and no one is willing to do that quote. And John can report out that next time, but he's called several companies that, and companies that recommended other companies, and they haven't had someone come look at it. There has been an effort to get someone to look at that floor. And John can call you, Scott, and fill you in on which companies have been contacted.
The problem lies, and nobody's gonna spend the time to look at something unless they absolutely positively know that they have a chance to do it. So this idea of just calling a contractor up and saying, hey, you wanna come down and look at my roof? Well, we had that done by the people that we have do our roofs. And that's how we got to that price. And our architect looked at the list of stuff that we had on that list and gave us prices for all that stuff. That's how we got to that number.
Except for the floor, which they
Except for
couldn't
the floor, which was not, we couldn't find anybody to give us a price. So consequently, the idea of, especially now that it's out, that the bond didn't pass, and it's gonna be another architectural study to look at it, and it's gonna have to go back out to none of that stuff is like that. And the problem is everybody's working right now. Contractors, estimate, all that stuff. It's even, you can't find somebody to work on your own home, let alone build a house today. So that's all stacking up against what we need to do. So getting an architect firm to come in and tell us what our buildings need to make them safe, habitable, things that we need to do to fix them, is going to have to go out to an RFQ. There's no way around it because the money is not in this year's budget. So we're going to have that stuff ready, put it in next year's budget, pass it, and then go out for an RFQ to hire architects. Now, when we had the architects for the plans for the new building, we had 9 architects. We interviewed 3, settled on 1. And it's going to be the same process when we do the engineering study. Just the way it goes.
Question. When we were brainstorming, wasn't there this idea of a feasibility study in terms of do we need all these buildings as well? Like, do we need all of the schools? Have we really looked at our numbers? Have we really looked at the spaces that we have and thought about those things as well? So I would hate to dump money.
But again, we need to
Right, all
we
of
need to
those
figure
pieces.
out what the total cost is for everything, so we can actually figure out if that's an option to
Right.
close the schools. So I think we need to put a committee together, just, if we're gonna do an ad hoc, we gotta get that going. We gotta have somebody get this going. I mean, we knew the bond didn't pass, what, 3 months ago now?
No, not 3 months.
June?
August.
August.
Sorry.
And the other thing that's in the back of my brain, because this is what I'm hearing, is the state funding list. So how do we get on that list? Do we get on that list?
Well, that's something committee.
It's not open right now.
Right, but when it does become
Right.
open, do we have the data points that we need to be able to be on that list?
I feel like we're kind of chasing this around because this is a multi-headed problem. Like, I hear exactly what you're saying, Scott. There is a sense of urgency with, we need to start formulating something to be able to look at what are all of the options. What are the options of the buildings that are feasible to stay open? What are the options of having to repair things? In those options, who is available and how do we go about that process to be able to actually get people? And it's exactly as you said, everybody's busy right now. We wouldn't be able to actually get someone until potentially the middle of the winter, because that's when things slow down. So, I mean, there's a lot of pieces of this that all, I mean, realistically, we need all of that information to come together, but we've got to decide on where we're gonna start, because the whole idea that you've got all of these pieces, like, it's all got to funnel into one collective to be able to say, we've got all of this information, now let's start prioritizing of what we need to do and where we need to be focusing our attention. And, I mean, there's a lot that's involved with that.
Well, and then again, the problem arises that we're a public entity. If we're spending the money, it has to be voted on, it has to be okayed, it has, nobody in this room is qualified
Right.
to say whether or not we need it in new air handlers in our buildings. That's gonna be an architectural firm that has an air balancer guy, CFM, how many cubic feet per minute you need in each room to clean the air. All that
Right.
is expensive. It's not cheap, and it takes time. So we can't just say, okay, we're gonna put new air handlers on Sabat's primary. Well, what size air handlers do you need? I'm not qualified to do that. Nobody in this room is. That needs to be an engineering firm, because it has to be somebody licensed that tells you what you need to do that. And that's not me saying it, it's not my private home, it's a public building.
Right.
And that's just the steps that we have to go through.
Yeah, so you're right. We're kind of trying to circle the wagons around an unknown problem, so to speak of. And for the last 7+ years, we've had these discussions, and we settled that the best solution at the time was to build a new addition. The community didn't agree. The community has the last word. All right. So now we got to go back, because we had come up with a solution that has been rejected. Now we got to come up with now. So I would suggest that the board direct your facilities committee to begin to do some work on just kind of laying out some of these, maybe a little path. What do we want to look first? Do we want to look at the physical capacity of the current buildings to house the number of students?
Yeah.
And go that. But let's live in a world of reality. When the board voted to close Wales Central School, Wales was selected because it was, even though Wales wasn't a recommended school to close, was because there was enough votes to get a supermajority to close Wales, but not to close Libby Tozer. There wouldn't be enough supermajority. I don't think there's a supermajority right now to go and close either one of those old schools. We have to really come up with justification on why, if we can get down to one less school, it's going to be a tough sell, because it means that Scott and I really don't have much say with our little votes, but you're going to have to get almost everybody, you're going to have to get everybody in the two communities that have that, everybody on that schools to vote for it, plus some on another, in order to get a supermajority to close the school. But that takes a long process anyway. So the idea is that the finance committee, or the facilities committee, can start looking down and say, well, let's assess what we have capacity for, all right, and then chunk it out and try and come back, and just come back to the board, and with whatever they come up with. I mean, I happen to be on it now. I haven't been on it for a while, but it's not something that I'm necessarily looking to do, but I think we have a committee for that function, and that's a place to start. and go down that list of things that have already been identified, just for informational purposes, to refresh, to come back and say, there's some of these things we know are gonna have to be done in the next 2 years, whatever, then those are things we're gonna have to look at putting in a budget. Whether we actually end up doing it or not, we can allow for it in the budget, in case we can. But that's my recommendation, that the board charge the facilities committee to start this process, get it going, and then don't bury it in that facilities committee, but have them work on it, bring it out for the sunshine, and then broaden it up when the appropriate time.
That's where I was trying to figure out where we wanted to go with this decision. Like, where are we headed? Who should spear up that process? So,
And I think Scott's right. I think that the sooner we start an ad hoc committee, I think the better we'll be. And there are things that the committee can look at. It can look at available space. It can look at consolidating, the perception in the community is that Oak Hill is full of empty space. You know what I mean? We could move the 8th graders up there. We could move the 5th graders back to Cary Rick. So I think an ad hoc committee can look at those things and get that information out to the community that says, okay, this is what would happen if we put the 5th graders back at Cary Ricker. This is what would happen if we move if we move the 8th graders up to Oak Hill. Do we have, I think that's a great idea for the ad hoc committee to look at that stuff, get that information out to the community. So people aren't coming back to us and saying, well, Oak Hill's got 10 empty classrooms nobody's using, or there's all kinds of room at the middle school, and why are you only housing 2 grades per school? You know what I mean? So the perception in the community is what's going to sell what we need to do eventually. And the more information that we can get out about that, the better. So I agree with you, Scott. I think an ad hoc committee can look at those things and present all that information as we get it and push it out to the community.
So are we doing an ad hoc committee, or do we want to charge the finance
I
and
think we can
facilities
do both.
committee
I
to
think
kind of
it's important to do both.
do both?
Yeah,
I think we can do both.
yeah.
And the needs, and the
So-
focus groups.
Focus group. So it's just, any committee, whether it's our own or an ad hoc, has to have narrowly defined
Yes.
guidance and goals, responsibilities, and what they can do, all right? So that, I would say that probably needs to be worked on. And
Well,
brought back with what it would be for that committee, what their responsibilities would be, and because they're going to be asking a lot of information, and we don't want them to task our administrators with a lot of other superfluous stuff if it's not within their identified focus area.
I would suggest that the finance and facility break apart. That it would be way too much in an hour to cover finance and facilities if they have a larger charge, the facilities. It sounds like you would like the facilities to map out things, and part of the map out is the ad hoc committee. And then when that's ready, it comes to the board level to be voted on for the ad hoc committee to be created. That's what it sounds like. But it was,
Well, that would take a lot of changes in our structure to break that committee apart.
Well,
Okay, well,
couldn't we have like just facilities committees? And, not together at that one meeting, but we could have facilities workshops, because we've had them before. We've had just facilities workshops that we discussed the architect, we discussed, that
right,
stuff.
that's what I'm saying, because if you do both in that 1 hour,
I'm
yeah.
not talking about that.
You
I'm
want
talking
to
about
schedule a
having
different time for the facilities
workshop
shop.
meeting
Okay.
to get us going down the path that all we talk about is facilities.
Okay, all right.
So
So
this
we'll
was-
work on that.
This was just a discussion to see
Right.
where you guys really wanted to head for any kind of district capital improvement. So now that we have all your discussion and your ideas, we'll get working on that. So, are there anything else? No? Okay. So now we'll move down to 7.2 to discuss the regional school unit number 4 funding formula and review impact of other formula options. This review needs to be completed every 5 years, and there was information given in your packet. So this is also another one of those, if we're going to dive into this, should it be a separate committee or should it be finance and facilities that handle this part of it? So.
Yeah, so Jill and I talked a lot about, you know, our goal here is tonight to give kind of some baseline information, baseline. And I'm going to ask Jessica Klum to come up. Can you come up here, Jess? Because we're going to go over some information that can get complicated, and we recognize that because we've had to go over it. So there is statute on looking at a formula change. We're not at that. Looking at that, we're reviewing. And so the DOE said you're not, because you're going to be pointing and I'm going to be pointing. Yes. So you can decide, yes, we would like to move forward with it. I'm going to, you want me to go first? Yeah. That we're going to, you can have a committee that does that work to review it. You could do the finance committee and have them review it. We did talk to the DOE representative, Paula. What's Paula's last name again? Yeah, Paula Gravel from the Department of Education, who reviewed things with Jessica and I that we're going to share with you this evening. So this is a starting point of just getting some information. Jessica will be working with the DOE representative around different options that have been brought forward. You know, for example, if it was all on evaluation, or it was all on student enrollment, or if it was all on splitting, 90% enrollment, 20%. 10% evaluation. So doing some different options that we are prepared to bring to the Finance Committee at the next meeting. So you can see some other options and then decide how do we report out about that, okay? So this is baseline information to just get, you know, our feet wet, and then the Finance Committee will have more discussion. Okay. So I am going up here because so public can see and I can explain, but you have this in front of you.
You'll need your mic so the public can hear you.
Okay. So well, I think I'm going to be all right. Okay. So as explained to us to really focus on is this part of the ED 279. So just as a review, the ED 279 calculates for every school department in the same way different weights around your enrollment, your student body, your teaching staff, all your staff, and it calculates it based on a lot of new numbers and weights, and it gets to a final number of, for a basic model of education, what would be the cost to the RSU4. And I've told Sharon, she's to give me any signals, because I went over this with Sharon and Kelly from Litchfield, and I'll be going over it with Tim when he's available from Sabatis, and we kind of talked it out as well. So I told Sharon, give me any signals as we go through. So if you look at this section, this is the section that determines what can the local towns afford. Okay, thanks. So it starts with the enrollment. So it's already calculated the cost of staff and students. It's already done all that calculation, and it came to this number here, which is the $16,452,822.16. So it's already calculated what does it cost to educate the students of RSU4 based on this formula. And what it does is it looks at about enrollment, and enrollment is determined on a 2-year average of our October 1 counts. So right now we're working hard to count for all of our students so that we get the most money, right? We want to, our October 1 counts are crucial. And then they're averaged. And so you can see that for this coming year, they had us at 1,309.5 students. And they then say Litchfield had 436 students, Sabatis had 645, and Wales had 228.5. Okay? Well, it can be a homeschooled student. It can be somebody who's coming for part of a program.
2-year average.
And it's an average.
2-year
Yeah.
average. So
Could be
if it's
two.
one number off,
It probably splits it. Yeah. Okay. So what it does is they take the totals from each of the communities and they divide it by the whole to get percentages. So Litchfield has 33.3% of the enrollment, Sabattis has 49.26, and Wales has 17.44. So there's the percentages of the enrollment. Okay. So then you come over here. We're going to go this way. No, yeah. So you look here, and so then what it does is it tells us this percentage of the total that has been calculated. Right? So we're going to times this to get the local contribution. The local total, not contribution, excuse me. The total amount of the budget. So you can see here, this is Litchfield's total, this is Sabattis's total, and this is Wales' total. So of the formula that calculated RSU4, they then divide it by the percentages based on enrollment. So these numbers are important. Now you can see over here, Sabattis has debt that they brought with them when you formed the RSU4. So they brought debt in. The debt is assigned to Sabattis. So you go along here. Norma Jean, can you bring? Yeah, okay. And so that debt has been added to this number, okay? And then we have a new total with the debt.
Is that debt the middle school?
Yes.
Yeah. So it came in and it got applied to Sabattis. All right. That is the enrollment. Starts these figures. So here's the figures. Now we come over here. That's part A. Part B, we get the state evaluation, which is a 3-year average of the evaluation for each town. So you can see what the evaluation was for Litchfield, Sabattis, and Wales. And then you have the mill rate set. The mill rate is set. Every district has the same mill rate because that's the state set mill rate. And that fluctuates every year depending on how much money they have to spend on education. They adjust a mill rate to determine that. Okay? So then you come over here through this calculation. I know Norma Jean said be patient as I move along. We have to zoom out to zoom in. Okay. Sorry. And this determines what each town can afford. So this calculation has nothing to do with the enrollment. This is a 3-year the evaluation. I would say evaluation because of teacher. Yeah, she would say that's teacher. Okay, so valuation is a 3-year average from the previous 3 years. Okay? So this calculation here determines how much each town can afford.
Katie, is that based on taxes,
Yeah.
house valuation?
Yes. Sharon, do you want to speak to state assessment?
Not the town assessment. Yeah.
Based on real estate sales.
Gotcha.
So we can't change this, right? This can be changed, the enrollment, depending on how many students move in and out, but this is set. Okay? So this is determined. So then we come to how much is the state then going to pay, right? So they decide what can the local afford, which will determine what the state is going to pay. So Litchfield, remember back up here, their portion is $5.4 million. We take away what they can afford to pay according to this calculation, which then determines what the state will pay. And they do that with each. So you see Sabattis, 8.5 million, they can afford 2.2 million. Wales, 2.8 million, they can afford 880,000. So then you go over here, and what does the state contribute now? So the state contributes $2.7 million for Litchfield. It contributes $6.3 million to Sabattis and $1.9 million to Wales. So the state, from the $16 million total cost, contributes $11,108,000. So this is what the local contribution is, and this is what the state contribution is. Okay?
I think it's important just to point out on the Sabattis number,
Mm-hmm.
that number is so high because that 472,000, that's the state share of their middle school. So they added into the formula, but that is, if everything else was blank, we would get 472,000 because we have to pay that, because that, and the state is paying that. So it's really outside of the, really
No.
the formula. It's a throwing in additional amount, just, it's an in and out.
Right, but remember, there's the total with the debt.
Just, yeah.
Okay,
That includes,
they take,
that includes the,
it includes the debt that came in, yes. That's the total amount that Sabattis, yes, is as part of the ED 279 total. That's
the state's
16.9.
actually gonna give us 470,000.
Mhm. Well, they give 6.3 million, which includes the 400. It's not in addition to. Not from what we understand. Okay. All right, so this is important because it shows you how is it determined in the ED 279, so that everybody understands what's Litchfield's calculations, what's Sabattis' calculation, what Wales' calculation is. That gets us the numbers, okay? So then we go to the next sheet, and Jessica's gonna, well, I'm gonna just say it briefly, and then Jessica's gonna explain something. So when we talk to, go all the way up to this area here. No, go down, I go up, yeah, I'll keep going, yep. All right, so the DOE representative, which Jessica will share numbers comparatively, many RSUs are now moving towards taking the percentages from the ED 279 and applying it to the local contribution, okay? So remember, we have that local contribution, ED 279, and then Article 13 is the additional local dollars that gets us to the 21 million, plus there's other additional dollars in other articles, okay? So she said that many RSU are going to this percentages because it takes the enrollment, then it takes the evaluation, and then it determines the state funds. So you can see here, if that was an option under consideration, these percentages are different. And Jessica's going to explain what the comparison would be if this were, passing of the wand. And the speaker.
All right. Can you guys hear me okay? No, I'll see if I can multitask a little bit.
Going to the next.
Yes, please. So I just want to share all with you about the cost sharing formula that we're currently using and the idea of using the EDU 279 method. So this is the one that we're currently using here. And it's using a 50-50 cost sharing scenario to calculate each town's share by using 50% of the student count and 50% of the MRS valuation. So we're using the Article 13, which is the local additional amount, which is what you see here. So when doing this, this is a weighted average here for Litchfield. So it's 33.08% student and 45.98% valuation. So that's the weighted of the 39.53 you see here. When we go down to Sabattis, they're assessed the 44.08 here, and that makes up 49.12% student count and 39.0% valuation count. And when you look up here to Wales, the 16.39, that is 17.80% student count
and 14.98% valuation. And I'll come over here, and this is the other method or scenario that we're all discussing using the EDU 279. And just like Katie said, we've been talking with Paula Gravel at Department of Education, and she shared that a lot of districts and more districts are starting to use this valuation going forward. This method uses a 3-year average valuation method to assess each town. The percentage changes every year depending on the information. She's telling us that the method's being used because it's accurate and fairness to all towns. And so with the method that Katie just described, you can see that if we did go to this method, Litchfield's percent would go to 46.13%. Sabattis actually would decrease to 38.73%, and Wales would also decrease to 15.14%. There's other methods out there. If you guys are interested in learning about them, I'd be interested in learning about them too, but we wanted to show you our current method and then the EDU 279 method.
Do you know of any methods that don't include evaluations?
Yeah, so you can have 100% student count. You can have 90-10, 60-40 splits. There's a variety of different splits.
I mean, I can see why Litchfield's upset.
You think? Yeah, but the mill rate impact is still lower for Litchfield than the other two towns.
Well, I just did some quick math, like cost per student, and they're paying a lot more.
So very.
It's not just simply based on they can afford it.
Well, so this goes on what the state thinks that each town can afford. There's very few school districts that use 100% student, but if that's something that you're interested in learning about, I can definitely do the figures, and we can present that to you.
So this is state, not school board.
This is state
So this is
This is
state
Department of
recommendation.
Education recommended,
Right,
right
it's not
here.
something the school board came
No.
up with.
No, this
I'm
is
just
what
making that very
DOE.
clear, that it's not the school board who comes up with these numbers.
No.
Okay.
No, this is what DOE recommends. This is what we're doing currently. But there's also a plethora of other scenarios that we could, do numbers for if you guys are interested in it.
So, I was trying to do some research too,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm kind of a numbers person. And we did this discussion, and we looked at the student, all evaluation, different scenarios of the RPC, and we settled on that because we thought it was fairer than 100% evaluation.
Right.
Because Litchfield didn't have as many students as Sabattis. But Litchfield's property value is higher, and so their mill rate to go and collect that has got to be a lot less than what it is to collect the amount in Sabattis. So that's why it was settled on back then, all right? Looking in the minutes from our RPC, it was addressed for several meetings, and then it was initially approved to be part of the plan that went off. I've looked in statute, and it looked to me, and I'm not a legal person, that on any new funding formula change after 2007 or something like that, it has to be 100% evaluation.
When I was looking at the statutes, which I'm still working with Paula Gravel,
Yeah,
but
there's
that.
three other ones, but they
but-
were all, I thought, for units or something before 2007. That's how we could, that's what allowed us to use something else, because that was one of the other options, was to go 50-50. But again, I read it quickly, looked at it, went back and looked at minutes to see what I could find for minutes.
Well, when I was looking at the statutes, what I saw was that we can have a committee to look at all scenarios if you'd like.
Yeah, we're supposed to every 5 years
Yeah.
to review.
School board or a committee is what the statute says.
I have real concern about valuation, particularly that this doesn't even take into consideration the inflation of the market and what it will look like.
Yeah, we don't know what next year will,
Yeah.
right, exactly. Yeah.
Not to mention Litchfield
So this is just the beginning. Jessica and I talked about finance committee. There'll be other scenarios brought forward. But if there's one that you want specifically run, like we had all enrollment, we had some of those other ones. If there's something else you're like, well, could you run that? You know, we can do that.
I just feel like it'd be something simple. If you take the total that you need and then you divide it by the amount of students you have, you know how much it costs per student, and you know how much is in each town. So you kind of know what their responsibility is for, and then you would just add the debt from Sabatis and come out with a super fair number based on that. Does that make sense?
Well,
You mean you're talking about additional local, not this. This is the additional local.
Right.
You can't change the ED 279.
He's saying additional local based on.
Right. You would say the additional local taking this number and divide it by the number of students. Is that what you're saying, Scott? You would take,
If you
yes.
take that amount, you
If you're 100% enrollment.
right,
Yep.
divided by 1,309.5 students, you know how much it costs per student, and you know how many students are in each town. So you kind of would know what their responsibility is to pay for their own students.
So we must have a calculator, do it, we got the
I
numbers.
mean, well, I just, yeah, that,
Well,
We'd have to, the per
and then you would
pu,
add in-
the-
and then you would have to add in the carried over debt for Sabatis would have to be added to that figure.
Well, that's not in that figure.
that's not
right,
an
that has
additional
nothing to do
local.
with this.
Understandable, but when you're calculating their portion or their responsibility, they would obviously.
You would take that first, you take that first number, Scott. You're in the right, I know where you are. You take that 16,452.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, the state every year does a per pupil calculation, which is not cut and dry. They do not take a total and divide it by the 13. It's not calculated that way. So we'd have to decide, what do we mean by per pupil? Is it that directly that number against the third column? The first column against the third column?
That's 15, right? 15,452?
It's 16,452, 822, and 16 cents.
Divide that by 1,300 students.
I think they're doing that. That's why I
And
didn't.
then all you have to do is divide that number by Sabatis, Litchfield, and Wales per pupil.
You have to add the $100,000 to that 3.6, it's actually 3.7.
Yep.
It's actually 3.7
Because of the other-
for the additional.
Yeah, because of the other article. Yes.
Using that one column from the assessment sheet. But what we found out by looking at what other schools are doing, that not many schools use just the student count.
I don't think any school uses.
So I think if, for local additional, if we use just the student count and the percentages that they have in here, then for the local additional, Litchfield would be 1,215,219. You got the other, you don't have the other slide up anymore,
Right.
which was
You can put it back up.
1,400,000. Sabatis would go to 1,795,565, so they'd see close to $200,000 increase. And Wales would go to 636,476 from 598. So Wales would see a $40,000 increase.
So that's just addressing the local additional.
That's just the,
Right.
because we can't change the
You
ED
can't
279.
change
Right,
the
correct.
amount.
Yeah.
Right.
If he
The
took this
required
number.
amount.
Right.
So for clarification purposes, this would be based upon the student count each year at October 1 count.
A
We would-
number that we would get.
We would
from the
have to
state.
agree on, is it going to be this number? Is it going to be a 2-year
Well,
average?
that's what I'm wondering. Is
That's
it
what-
gonna be a
yeah.
2-year average, or is it going to be the official count, as of October 1st?
Right,
So
because
if
our-
that would-
Budget year.
Right,
Because for our funding formula, it is not a 2-year average.
right.
We
Right,
shouldn't be sticking that, these numbers shouldn't be what's appearing in our local formula. It is a student count as of October 1st per the
Right.
the RPC.
right.
So it's not. a
From the year
2-year run.
before, probably.
What's that?
You'd have to do the October 1st from the year before.
When you build the budget,
It would be based on,
it'd be on the previous October 1st.
correct, right, yeah.
October 1st.
Because you never know how many students you're gonna have the next year, even with the state.
Right.
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 Now, that funding formula can change, and you can change You can go for a 5-year student average, you can, if you're gonna change the funding formula, and it's yours, as long as you can get sign off, that it's a legitimate and meets the criteria of statute. And then you can get the 3 towns to approve increasing or decreasing their taxes.
Well, here we go again. I mean, we've been down this road quite a few times. Litchfield, because of our valuation, has always paid the bigger purse. And with the way the elephant in the room is right now, Litchfield's not happy with this all around. So I would think that we could all come together to make things as easy and as equitable for everyone. Not saying, well, Litchfield's been doing it for years, Sebastian's gonna be upset if we make them take more. We should be taking what we need to be responsible for in a equal and fair manner. So I don't know how we can get there, but Litchfield is not happy.
So are you talking equal and fair in total, which would mean we'd have to offset the state's evaluation, because the state is 100% evaluation for the ED 279.
I understand that.
All right, so you're talking about only additional local.
Additional local is what I'm talking about. What we can control as a board.
So why we did this, why we brought it, was for this discussion. So it looks like we're giving the finance committee quite a bit of extra work to start doing in the beginning of the school year. Yeah. But we also wanted to see, was there a different formula way that you were wanting us to kind of hand them over to say, hey, can you start looking at this way? Can you look at that way? This is why this was brought forth. Because there has been a lot of concern.
Enrollment numbers would be interesting to see. Maybe it was 100% enrollment.
I think Jess was gonna do that.
Yeah.
Do that, absolutely. I also
Yeah,
think-
those are the numbers I just gave you.
Yeah, but to
But-
just have it on.
Well, you want it
paper
from the previous year, so,
comparison.
Well, yeah, that's using the state.
yeah, if we, right, do you want, well, we need
But
direction, though. Do you
If
want
you're
it?
gonna change the formula,
Right.
you should probably change that to the rolling 2 years, just to keep it with the state.
And is the state gonna keep it that rolling 2 years? Because they changed that for COVID.
Right,
That's not how
to
it
help
always been.
protect.
They changed that for COVID. So if you go with just what the ED 279 uses, then you change with the state as the state changes.
Correct. It would, right.
I also think it would be interesting to see different percentages. So like right now it's 50-50. What would it look like if it was 60% student, 40%? Like if we can kind of see
Give us some scenarios.
some
Right.
different scenarios.
Mhm.
That might or might not be feasible and or sustainable. But I think equity is important.
Yeah, I think it's easy enough for Jessica to do, to give us the percentages, starting at 10% evaluation, 90% student population, and work numbers up by 10, which is exactly what we did in the RPC. And the other way, when you get to 50%, go the other way. 10% enrollment, 10% evaluation, 90% enrollment, until you get to the middle, and we should be able to look at numbers at each percentage in 10% increments. 90-10, 20-80, 30-70, 60-40, 50-50, and the other way.
And you can back into the number by putting that in.
Right.
And and then dividing that number, and then you can actually get that to give you your percentages of what it would be based upon student evaluation.
Right.
So that you can say, if you wanted it to be equal based upon what student population would be, then, that's, but, then it's just student population. If that's what you think is equitable. If you're looking for dollar equitability, there's no way to do that. You can't say all of us paid $300,000.
Nope.
Right?
Didn't say I.
So it has to be If you're looking for equitable besides this, then it's student population or it's evaluation. There's really not a mix, because then you're no longer using the equitable, you're just manipulating numbers to come up with a number
Right.
that is somewhat even or palatable. Right, so,
I would have to say that my only concern with student population is this. When we look at the past 2 years, not counting this year enrollment, and we look at the number of homeschooled students due to the pandemic situation, that impacted the overall number of students that we had in actual school and how much, per student. Realistically, the cost didn't go down for anyone, but the number of students went down pretty significantly. I mean, we had, like over 200 students that were homeschooled, and normally that average is somewhere between 50 and 60. Like, I think we still have 100-ish there. So I would be concerned if we're gonna base it upon a 1 or even 2-year enrollment factor that we're looking back now, because I don't think that's, that's a blip. Right. And I feel like, if we're gonna be bouncing up and down like that, I don't know as if that's beneficial to the students overall. Does that make sense? Or am I just?
everything bounces, evaluations bounce.
Right,
Yeah.
right. But what I'm saying is, if we're doing it by a yearly count, perhaps it should be an average of a couple of years at least, so as to balance out that dramatic shift just in student population number. I don't know.
You know, 50 students out of 1,200 some students isn't too big of a shift. It's probably spaced around the 3 different towns anyway,
Right.
right? So being worried about how many are homeschooled, our student population has been going down. We were 1,601 officially when we formed the RPC, so we had to be at least 1,600.
Correct.
We were 1,599, but the state said, no, you're 1,601 to allow us to form.
I think that would only be an issue if one town specifically was very heavy with homeschooling.
Right.
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 Which there, I mean,
Right. We always have a large number of homeschool students because we have a large Brethren and Mennonite population. Right, that's true. Right.
Right, but they never get into the count. So they weren't in school, although homeschooled students can come back to high school and take courses.
Correct.
Do we count them in the student population?
Just, you count percentage.
Just a percentage?
Yeah.
Yeah. Percentage.
Yes.
So fortunately, our probably 100 or more Amish students are all,
Amish don't count.
they don't count because they don't come to the public schools at all.
They have an exemption, they're not counted as homeschool.
Right.
We
So,
don't track them through the homeschool process.
yeah, so.
So I would like to see numbers.
And just to clarify, changing the funding formula, the community is gonna have to vote on it.
Yes. Yep.
And if you change the funding formula, some towns are gonna go up, some towns are gonna go down. That's just the way it's gonna be.
Understand that.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that as a RSU, the 3 towns can come together and do what's right.
Well-
Because, again, Litchfield is not happy. And they haven't been for many years, and we know where that's leading.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
So it leads someplace. You know, I would like this RSU to stay as compact and complete as it's been for as long as I've lived here. You know, Litchfield, Sabattis, and Wales at the high school have been together for a long time, and it would be nice to keep it that way, but it's, you know, you try and raise the budget in Sabattis $100,000 to buy a fire truck, they'll shoot it down, and you want them to add a few $100,000 for the school budget year after year after year after year. Probably in Wales, it's gonna go up, you know, 30,000, we can't get 10,000 for.
30,000 is a quarter of a mil for us.
Yeah, so
I mean, you have
the
to
mill
look at it
rate is
relative.
significantly different in the towns. So, you know,
Well, then I guess the best thing is, if we choose to go forward, is that, the town of Litchfield will have to really do some, canvassing and explaining why we feel this way. And hopefully, people will, take it for what it is. We've been together for many, many years. And for the last how many years, we've taken the brunt.
you did when it was a high school by itself,
It wasn't.
because it was valuation then too. All right? So, because of evaluation, that's the curse of evaluation. That's the curse of being Wiscasset instead of Brunswick. Now that the air station's closed. It's the way it works. It has to be approved in all 3 towns.
Exactly.
Not a combined vote.
And I understand that.
So if one town votes no, it's a no. That's why we had to get all 3 towns independently, which they all did, after having information sessions in all 3 of the towns,
I
and
was
public
there, Bob.
ones, and, it was all spelled out what it was gonna be like. Examples were put up there, funding, and it got passed in all 3 towns.
However, if Litchfield decides to leave and there is a committee that's looking at that,
Right.
imagine what that's going to
That's right.
impact for the 2 towns that are left.
I don't think it'll have a negative impact, because we'll only have 2 schools. Right? We'll have the middle school and the high school, and I think we can get all of our students in those 2 schools.
So I'm gonna stop the
But-
discussion at this
Right.
point, because now we're starting to get
We're debating.
further away from what we were on topic for.
Thank you.
So we're going to go ahead and just push that to the finance committee, and they'll come back with us. Jess will come back with some numbers for us to kind of look at and go through, and then we'll have some further discussion on that. So let's go down and move on to 7.3, to approve changing the calendar to reflect a new date for graduation. Graduation will move from June 5th, 2023 to June 3rd.
Oh, 2023.
2022, sorry, to June 3rd. See, that's
Yeah, I know.
to
2023.
2022. Do you want to explain it? Do
Oh,
you
yeah.
want me to?
Okay, there was a typo, right? There was a typo on the calendar,
2022.
right.
So graduation will be June 3rd, 2023.
23.
Correct.
Yes.
And that's on a
Do you want to
Monday?
explain why?
Yeah,
Why
so,
move it?
yeah.
I thought it was a switch.
Okay, so it has been on a Monday,
Yep.
and we have been receiving feedback. The project graduation group had met, and they put it out both through the senior advisor, through principal, around, is that a possibility of moving it to a Saturday? And they had really good arguments. Before, everybody would jockey for position on those weekends. They're 2 big weekends, the first weekend and the second weekend. And so at that time and Mark will correct me if I go off wrong, go, whoa. When they used to do it at the high school gymnasium and then looked to move it out, they looked at sound, lighting, things, spot, and Monday was chosen. So we did some research and called, the Civic Center, Marco did, and checked what would be available. Now some schools have moved away from being in the Civic Center to other venues, so they're open some more slots. We also checked area high schools and when were their commencements. So the only conflict is Edward Little will also be graduating the same evening, but we didn't see that as a problem. So we want to, honor that this is a change that we think will be positive. And so we're looking for that. And when we do this, when we do an upload of the calendar, we have another correction on a board meeting date. So the little tweaks that we'll correct. But this is a major change, and we want to get it out as soon as possible to the families to let them know the graduation. And I know, Mark, you've talked to your senior advisor group and your leadership group, and they support the date change.
So we're looking for a motion.
Mhm.
Have the explanation prior to. Thank you.
You're welcome. No, it's all right.
So I'm looking for a motion to approve changing the calendar to reflect a new date for graduation. Will move from June 5th, 2023 to June 3rd, 2023.
Second.
Any discussion?
Marco, do you know if this is a date that will be able to continue on?
Yeah, usually the Civic Center's
Right.
pretty good about holding those dates
Right,
for
yeah.
us.
Okay.
I mean, they had us slated for Monday, and I reached out, as Katie explained, and, I just asked, are there any free weekends in June? And she said, really the first weekend was what was available. Because there are a number of schools, in the Augusta vicinity, I guess, if you will, that do use the Civic Center as a graduation venue. And, it's been a great venue to work with, and we want to continue to work with them just because you don't have to worry about setup or breakdown. I mean, they're wonderful people to work with. It's been a great partnership through the years, or at least, since I've been with the high school.
Any other questions, discussion? If none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? All right, so the motion passes to change graduation. Very good. We will move down to committee reports. So Finance and Facilities will report on our next board meeting. And Personnel and Policy Committee met today.
We did, and we reviewed 4 policies, which will be coming to the board for first read. Would you like me to list those policies so you all know what's coming?
Yes, please.
Okay. Policy AC, which is non-discrimination, equal opportunity, and affirmative action. Policies ACAA and ACAA-R, which is around harassment and sexual harassment of students. ACAB and ACABR, which is harassment and sexual harassment of school employees. And GCFB, which is the recruiting and hiring of administrative staff. These policy review changes are due to kind of 2 major laws that have happened. One that happened in October of 2021 and one that happened recently in August of 2022. These are pretty lengthy. Some of them are procedural things. So Katie's going to get you all of the information well ahead of the board meeting for the first readings, so everybody has time to really look at them.
Thank you. Anything else?
That's it.
And then CAI and Technology will report at our next board meeting. Okay. We'll move down to 9 board member comments.
Yep.
Yes, Robbie.
Yeah, I'd like to thank the support staff, custodial staff, and everybody that got the buildings ready, and the teachers and administrators for starting us off. I hope, I don't want to jinx us, to be a normal school year. Kids are in, students are in school, teachers are in school, and I think that the community owes those people a debt of gratitude to power through what we went through, an unprecedented 2 years. And we came out the other end, I think, stronger.
Bob?
Yeah, I just have a question. So we moved to Power School. So how many different programs of this type have we had in the last 10 years? I think at least 3, maybe 4. Why? Because it costs us money. Years ago, when we stick money in the budget for technology, I know the board often went and said, we want to make sure we're not spending more money on technology for administration than we are on students, because we're here to educate students. So why do we keep reinventing the wheel?
Yeah, I think the biggest change right now was to consolidate everything together. So previously, and with every previous change we've had, there hasn't been one where we combine the student information system, the grade book, the assessment data all into one package. And this one also combines our emergency messenger into a package, our food service into a package. So this is the first time we've had one where we can bring them all together. So this was a good change.
So this one ought to last us for 10 or 15 years?
I'm thinking. I'm hoping. I don't know, though. I might not be here.
A lot of money was spent. A lot of money and time.
Anyone else? Scott, did you have? Was that your hand up? Or no? Okay. Anyone else? Jen?
I guess, welcome back to, hopefully, as Robbie says, a good school year. This board has been charged with doing a lot of hard things over the last couple of years, and we have a plethora of more difficult things that are lying before us. So I really hope that we can continue to take in the feedback from each other and to take in the feedback from the community as well to guide us in really making the best decisions for our kids and for our communities. It's not going to be easy, but, given this meeting tonight, we need to be able to be open to listen and to really take into consideration in making those decisions, because it is impactful. It's impactful now and it's impactful down the road. So we just need to be mindful and know that we need to work together to do that and have a common goal in mind.
Anyone else? Without objection, I will declare the meeting adjourned. 8:30.
Good timing.
37.
Good timing.
You didn't get the report?
Yeah, I just want to know real quick. Next week's homecoming at the high school. So if anyone wants to come check out sporting events, on Saturday we have our girls soccer and football are kind of wrapping up the week. They're both playing at home on Saturday, and we have a big kind of homecoming event planned with a bunch of our rec programmers. So.
Yes, thanks for inviting the rec. That's a really awesome thing.
He wasn't on there.